This is Khatt Chronicles, design stories from the Arab world, presented to you in collaboration with Africa. This is Khatt Chronicles. My name is Huda Smitshuijzen AbiFarès, and I have with me today Wael Morcos. Wael is a Lebanese graphic designer and type designer based in New York. He is one of the partners of the design Studio Morcos Key. Wael leads multilingual identity, editorial, environmental, and digital projects for cultural institutions in the USA and the Middle East. He graduated from RISD, Rhode Island School of Design, with an MFA in graphic design in 2013. He was featured in print magazines 15 Under 30, named a Young Gun by the Art Directors Club, an Ascender by the Type Directors Club, and was winner of the Vilcek Prize for Creative Promise in Design. Hello, Wael, and welcome to Khatt Chronicles. We have known each other for quite some time now, and it is a pleasure to have you here on our podcast and to have the opportunity to talk and reflect with you on your work and its evolution over the years. We have so many things to talk about. So let's start by saying, how are you feeling this morning?
Hello, Huda. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited. I'm feeling good. It's 10 a.m. in New York. I'm excited. I feel we're about to go on a story down the memory lane.
We'll try and start from the beginning. Like, how did you become a designer, and whether there was an event or a person or something that triggered you to make that choice?
I don't think there was a specific event. I think gradually in my last couple of years in high school, things started to make sense to me when I realized I need to make a decision in a couple of years where I want to go in university. I was a good student, so I took as many courses as I can. I was doing like this double baccalaureate program just to keep my options open with all the science, physics, and math classes because I could. I was not top of my class, but I was like good. So it was like, let's keep my options open and whatever. But then the last 2 years got really hard and specific with all those physics, chemistry, and math subjects. And I found myself like really uninterested in that. I would just like really enjoy just sitting in class and doodle and draw my teachers and draw my hands. And then like my favorite subject was the research that we had to do and laying it all out and doing the graphics for it and like whatever equivalent of Photoshop was. And I started realizing, no, I have to do something in art and culture, like something with this. I did not know what graphic design was. I did not know what was available. When I started looking around me, the subject matters and degrees in Lebanon, there was like the audiovisual field at USG. There was something called audiovisuel, which means that you graduate and you could be in campaigns. There was directors. I was like, oh, maybe I could be like a video clip director for performers. There was photography. I always had a digital camera with me that I took, like maybe I could become a photographer. So basically I was looking to see what's available in Lebanon around me. And then I stumbled onto something called graphic design. And it felt like it's a little bit of everything because you have to take photos, you have to deal with language, you have to like sketch sometimes. And it felt neither fully in advertising, which there was something about it that I felt was not right for me. And yeah, I think that is the closest match to what I want. And that's how the chips fell.
And then when you started, studying, I guess you just felt even more like confirmed with your decision, I guess. You
Yes.
didn't regret it. You're still designing, so obviously you did.
No, it was great because suddenly, I mean, you have to understand the last 2 years of my high school, I was going 6 days to school in very intense French, English, Arabic program. And that was like, life was going to look like that to me if you want to be a successful professional. And suddenly I'm in a foundation year going to class and doing like handiwork, collage, doodling and gouache, color wheels and 3D polyhedrons. It felt like I'm doing this just arty crafts and the option to do that. So it was very exciting and fun.
Mhm.
Parents kept me doing my projects until like 3 or 4 a.m. and they would not understand, wow, what is this major? What am I doing? But they trusted me. And yeah, it was interesting because for them, it was it was like, we don't know where the world is heading. So our only advice to you is pick something that you love and you can be successful at, because we're not gonna force you into anything. So I was like, I'm gonna follow my joy.
That's good. That's great. I mean, I think a lot of young men, they have like a pressure, especially if you were good in school, and they don't understand, like, why are you giving up something you can do? You can become an engineer and then you just go play instead. But,
Yeah.
I think maybe nowadays, like the atmosphere, there's a better understanding of what design is than at least when your time, certainly not in my time, but. I think it's nice to listen to you. Like, it makes me think about, when you study something, then you go into work, you still have to keep you still have to have something that keeps inspiring as you go along. Did you have something or someone that constantly, kind of helped you push yourself beyond what you expected from yourself?
I think there's a lot of people that inspire me. In my undergrad, it was my classmates. It was the people that I felt that were all taking this seriously together. At that point, it was Khatt, Apelian, Mayas, and Kool. We formed a nerd trio, and we were just doing everything we could. I think my
You
teacher
still work
now,
with Khatt, right?
yes,
Yeah.
very closely. Still always working with Khatt and still very close, good friends with Maya. Yara Furi was one of my teachers that also had an impact on me. I think I was very struck by something that she brought to class that a lot of the teachers didn't have, which is she used to be a design director at Muhtaraf. She was working for clients at the Middle East in Arabic and with Arabic fonts. So it's suddenly very different from everything that we're seeing in the books, which was all these European design standards, all in English and all. It was something very different, felt like connected to a reality that I'm about to face when I graduate. So that to me was very kind of inspiring. And from there, we started looking into designers that use Arabic and a visual culture that looked like us, that suddenly could be design as well. And there was not a lot of them. I think, for example, the Abedin is a name that comes up as like a good example of somebody who leveraged their own history, culture, and script as a foundation for their practice. From after I graduate, I went through several full-time jobs, and really every boss that I had, I was lucky that they were inspiring in a way. I used to love to kind of observe them, how they give feedback, how they present the work that we did to the clients, what things they kind of try to catch before we like becomes an issue, as we try to solve a design problem, and how they would think. And I would learn something at every step. And I've always had a group of designer friends around me. Christian Serkis was 1 year before me. Pascal Zohri was a couple of years before me. And these were amazing designers that were also following their own path, and talking to them, sometimes collaborating with them on projects, always been formative as well for me to make up my opinions and figure out what I'm doing.
And after how many years did you do your graduate? After how many years of working, did you decide to go to graduate school at RISD?
I think it was
And how was
3
that
or 4.
experience?
Yeah, 3 or 4 years after working in Beirut, I was working at Brand Central, which is the branding department in Saatchi in Beirut. I think 3.5 years or 4 into it, I just went and applied for schools in the US. I think during that period, the 3 or 4 years, I was doing my full-time job, but I was always still involved in other design things in parallel, namely the Khatt Foundation project, the typographic matchmaking, my internship in Amsterdam with the El Hema project, my font Kufam, my first font. All these were very formative moments, especially the El Hema internship, being a young designer in Amsterdam, suddenly in a project where microphones were pointed at me and I had to say things about typography that were worth, like, for people listening to it, forced me to like really think about what am I doing, what am I going to say. And being an outsider within that culture that people looked at me, I suddenly could see myself like from a third perspective, like people are like wondering what this Arab person is doing in Amsterdam, why he's not dressed this way? What does he talk about that way? What are they trying to do with the Arabic fonts? And it kind of forced me to find answers. And I think that required me to want to have a little bit more depth about my practice. I think the program I went to, ND, was amazing at like very hard skills, but maybe was not the strongest in like depth of thinking and writing, and at least in the undergrad program. So I felt I craved a little bit of that after working for 3 or 4 years, and I felt I kind of knew what I wanted to do with that. So yeah, I decided to apply for graduate school in the US.
And how was your experience with RISD? Because like you said, I think all undergraduates tend to be very skill-based, which is necessary. And they are different levels in different ways. But when you go to graduate school, it's kind of open. And I know RISD is quite open in the sense that you can, explore whatever you feel like doing, basically. I hope I'm describing it correctly, but how was it for you? What did you put into it? What did you get out of it?
You're absolutely right. It is that. And I think that was like what I realized quickly is that I expected a little bit more hand-holding or teachers to be like pointing me specific things that I need to answer and do. And I realized that it's not what a graduate program is about, first of all. And second, the faculty is not equipped, and nor should they be necessarily about every student's particular interest, specifically Arabic history or Arabic typography, or in that sense. So a lot of the work that I was doing sometimes would be met with like ahs and oohs and like described as exotic in a poster class. I'd be like, I mean, yay, they like the work, but that's not helping me go further. And I realized I had to look internally. I think what was most inspiring was my classmates. At RISD, the class was extremely diverse, but all of them were excellent at what they're doing, but in a whole completely different way. So to have like classmates from Seoul or Brazil or Germany or the US, and then all of them are approaching design differently, but then doing something really interesting about it, again, forces me to like, okay, well, what is my view? What do I want to do about? What do I want to talk about? Yeah, I think that was a realization that happened really quickly, and kind of like from there I was like, I'm not waiting for the approval of the teachers. I'm waiting for like some guidance, but I'm gonna try to do whatever feels right for me.
After that, you started your own studio, or did you also work for a while in New York and then started your own studio? How did that work?
I moved to New York after RISD. I did have a couple of full-time jobs. I worked for about a year and a half at a studio called CNG Partners. And after that, I worked for another like year and a half at a studio called Base Design. After Base, I actually did like a 1 year of freelancing with multiple studios on different projects. I think there's a lot of market for studios that hire designers for a project or not. And so I did like 4 months at IBM, a couple of months at MT.OTF. I did 6 months or 9 with Apple in San Francisco. So I was just like jumping around. And again, these were also very interesting, very formative, because it allowed me to kind of get a glimpse of different studios, different partners, and all doing graphic design. It's all about an idea that's presented visually, and then that needs to be told or sold to a client, and to observe how different partners, people cared about what was important, how they presented it. That was all formative for me as well, to kind of build my own way of okay, this is how you structure a deck. This is how you like try to focus on an idea. This is how you try to highlight the problem, and then how to try to justify the solution, and then how you make them fall in love with it, and how you keep the edge of the design exciting for what you want to do. And I think I was also a little bit over just sitting on my desk and getting a brief written down by my boss, the partner. And I always wanted to kind of know what conversation happened before that brief became a brief, and what kind of conversation happened with the client. I was curious about that dynamic that's behind the curtain at that point for me. And I realized I definitely cared too much about design to not be involved in that conversation, which meant like I've always had the drive to kind of start my own thing.
Were you always kind of like pigeonholed as a designer with a Middle Eastern background, that you're the expert on Arabic. I mean, certainly for Al-Hema you did, and for, but for other, working in the US, that's different, I guess. And were you always like pigeonholed that way, or you just had, all kinds of projects to work on?
Yes and no. In these studios, I was not pigeonholed as the Arab graphic designers, but as in my solo career, I can say that being recognized or seen as that was actually a benefit for me. It allowed me to stand out from the crowd of thousands of amazing designers in New York City, that I am the one who is the expert in this subject matter. So when I was at full-time jobs, no, I was rarely working on Arabic things, but when I started my own thing and I started getting projects that were more required expertise and cultural knowledge of Arabic.
And you mentioned in the beginning, you were talking about, the turning points of some project, and you mentioned Kufam, which is quite used actually. A lot of people love it, so do I. I mean, I'm a bit biased maybe, but really I see it used quite extensively, and that's really great that, it was adopted by Google, and it's one of the few fonts on the collection that is really strong, I think, in the Arabic collection. But then I see that you also, you describe yourself as type designer, even though you don't have a type foundry per se. So how did that come about? Like how, I mean, I know you're interested in it, but how did you get commissions, or did you, start to pitch ideas? How's that process working for you as a type designer? Do you combine it with other projects, like a branding project, you make a typeface for it, or how does it work? How do you do it?
I put on different hats when I'm graphic designing, when I'm doing graphic design, designing a book, when I'm designing an identity and typefaces. I'm always thinking what kind of typefaces are going to work for this book. Like, oh, I wish I had this kind of like flavor with that weight. It would be perfect for that. Or I wish the Arabic and English worked perfectly for that identity. It would make it everything much more easy for the client down the road. So I'm always thinking what kind of fonts would work. And then when I'm working on type design project, I'm always thinking what kind of graphic application might they have and who might use them. And remember, so I'm trying to kind of reconcile these two. I think I've always been a type designer on the side. My master was not a type design specifically. Many of my close friends, Tajak, Pascal, and Christian, all three went into type design. So I felt I wanted something a little bit different. And I think I learned everything I can from them directly. I collaborated with Pascal on Azure, which was one of my early fonts as well. I learned a lot from him. Working closely with Christian, hearing his feedback, and with KJ, working together. I was like, again, learning everything from them. And then I was in the US, and then my connections as somebody from the Middle East brought a lot of interest and projects that required Arabic type designs. So that's something that I was working on. And then I started calling in on KJ to take on these projects together. It started, I think, beyond Azure and Kufam. It started with commercial type and Christian Schwartz. When I was in between my 2 years at RISD, I had a summer where I looked for an internship and I applied for commercial type. And first they hired me to typeset the specimens for them. And then that built into a relationship, and they were, Christian was amazing. And then I think at that point was getting requests for some of the fonts to support Arabic. So kind of he was like, do you want to give that a stab? That was graphic Arabic. I think, when was that? 2015 or 16, I think. So I started working on that, and I brought in KJ to help me on that. Yeah, from that point, I think when I was at IBM, I was working for Mike Abbing, the creative director back then, who was revamping the IBM identity. He had just finished designing IBM Plex, all this huge family. He needed somebody to kind of, he wanted language support for a lot of these fonts. So he had seen graphic and some of my earlier fonts. So he called on me to kind of take on IBM Plex. So we did that with Kazakh as well. And from then on, I don't have a foundry yet, but I think a lot of the work that we get is commissions directly, and a lot of them is clients and foundries who are expanding into multi-script typefaces, and they want some of their best sellers to kind of support Arabic. So that was great because we got to, again, with KJ and me, and now we have three more designers on our team. So that's like a whole little baby team of Arabic type design specifically. We've done the Arabic for a lot of like very great and popular contemporary Latin fonts for foundries like Dynamo, Bold Monday, Grilly, Commercial Type. So that was kind of exciting to have all of these established Western type foundries looking to us to help them expand their libraries into Arabic. So that turned into like a parallel practice along with the studio with KJ and the team. So in parallel, there's the Morcos Key studio along with my partner, Jon Key. And then we run the graphic design studio in Brooklyn with a dedicated team of graphic designers. It's a lot of different things.
Busy life, busy life. What our yeah, I mean it's wonderful like listening to you, and I always like, when you meet someone at a certain age, no matter what they do, they stay in your brain at a certain age. Like you always, I can imagine people with children, they think their kids are kids even when they're like 100 years old. I have sometimes this feeling with young designers that I meet when they're just out of school and then all of a sudden they're like, superstars. And then they're still young in your head, or they're not, but it's like your emotion is different. It doesn't evolve with time. But speaking of emotions, I mean, I've seen a lot of your design work recently, like some of your projects that I really love. But I think I want you to talk about the ones you think are like really important, meaningful projects that have, a special place in your heart somehow. Either because the process was really great, or because, the topic or the context, or like you got a chance to do something that was not possible with other projects.
Yeah, I mean,
more than one project.
There's a lot of different projects that I love. And I think overall, when I look back, I mean, the studio, the Morcos Key studio is 9 years in like a month, or like a couple of weeks, we'll turn 9. So next year will be a decade of Morcos Key work. So all of the body of work that Jon and I built together is something that I'm very proud of. And every project has its different challenges. Some projects, I love them because of the particular design solution that we arrived at. Some projects, I love them because of it was a personal challenge to manage the scale of the project that I haven't done in that sense. Some projects, I love them because of the importance of the subject matter. For example, recently just finished some work for the Islamic Arts Biennale in Jeddah. That was a very intense project. We were designing the visual identity for the Biennale. We were designing the graphics for all of the exhibitions throughout the 4 galleries and the outside area, including panels and labels that had to be bilingual and complex in sizes. And we had to design 2 catalogs ready by the opening of the Biennale, and then 8 catalogs after the opening. And we were dealing with 4 artistic directors and the Biennale team. So keeping track of all of that while trying to always hold the highest design standard we can was very challenging. And expanding the team just to support this project and the timeline crunch that they were under, it was dense, but I think the end of it was something I'm very excited and proud about, and I think we pulled it off beautifully. It was called Wama Bainahuma, and we had different typographies for every gallery title. The catalogs are done and printed, and they look beautiful. So it's just this whole thing I'm very kind of proud.
Did you
We
create a
did.
special typeface for it, or did you use some of, like special lettering for it?
Yeah, we had custom lettering for the Biennale theme,
Yeah.
Huma, and then for each of the 7 gallery titles, Al-Madar, Al-Bidaya, Al-Muqtani, Al-Mudalla, Al-Mukarrama, Al-Munawwara, each of them had their own lettering and then color combination that all worked together. And all of that was reflected through the spatial. There was a wayfinding component as well, signage throughout the Biennale site that needed to respond to the identity, but respond to different lighting and reading requirements between 2 different scripts and all of that. So the complexity of all that, managing it from like pure management, but also from a design concept is something that I think I'm proud of. I think there's an exhibition we did a couple of years ago called Arabesque for artist Rayyan Tabit. It was at the Storefront for Art and Architecture here in New York. It's a beautiful gallery that has a big facade on one of the Manhattan streets. And we just wrote Arabesque with a huge kashida throughout the whole storefront. It was fun to see a huge Arabic word in the middle of Manhattan, just like that. My collaboration with Mizna, an organization here in Minneapolis, publishes poetry from the Arab world and focusing on Arab Americans. It's been a multi-year collaboration. We redid their identities. We redesigned their journal of poetry. We did the identity for the Arab Film Festival. And we did a special publication called I Want Sky, which is a combination of poetry on a big broad sheet that we brought in Haytham Haddad, illustrator from Palestine. So it was a mixture of multi-script typography with lettering, with illustration on a big newsprint. And I think the content was very touching and powerful. And I think it all came very beautifully. It was very well received. It was acquired by like 2 museums for their design collection, including the SF MoMA. So it's like really exciting to see that. Sometimes tiny projects are also very exciting, like doing the Arabic logo for Zohran Mamdani's campaign. It happened serendipitously, and it was really kind of...
That is very exciting on many levels. That's great.
Right. And the best part is like, it wasn't even commissioned, nor did they approach me. I just did it and sent it to them.
Oh, wow. And they liked it. They used it.
Mm-hmm. I think
fantastic. Wow.
I saw him running. I was excited, for what he represents and what he stands for. And I wanted to do something. And I was seeing the campaign, which was done by another studio. And then I said, like, what I do best is like inject my own story and culture and Arabic typography into everything that I do. So my contribution will be just designing the Arabic logo for them. And I did. And there was like 3 or 4 days before the election. And I was like, I have to do, if it's not now, like it's going to be too late. And I'll post it on my Instagram. If some people see it and if it sways 10 votes, that's like great. Yeah. So I went ahead and did it. We had a friend that was working with the campaign, Arsh Razuddin. She's an art director and designer. And I sent it to her and she's like, oh my God, they're just editing a video when he speaks in Arabic and it's going to be posted for the first time tomorrow. And that will be perfect to kind of like use that and reveal it. Can we use it? I was like, of course, here it is. Here are the files. Use it, abuse it, whatever you want. Yeah, that was exciting.
That's nice. It makes you think like, oh, maybe my logo made them win. No. It's just the thought. Maybe like you said, you swayed some voices. But I think it's really important. I think it's really important that the design and the image represents what the values of the candidate is, because it's subliminal. But I think personally, it might work. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's great that you took the initiative and did that. I mean, I think that also is, you've done many projects. I think when there were events and you felt like I have to contribute something, and I can think of the fantastic blanket that you made, the design for the event.
Beirut, yeah, Beirut in my heart.
Yeah, I mean these are sometimes I feel like some of these tend to be kind of self-promotion, but sometimes they're not. They're actually you can feel that the person behind it really like feels why he's feels the cause and does it just completely intuitively. And if it catches, great. If it doesn't matter. It's just your own, like you feel you have to contribute to the world you live in. It's very it's very good that you take these initiatives. I mean, that you find the time. Like I hear your projects running 2 kind of studios at the same time, or at least studio with a sub thing, and then you're doing all this work and commissions, and some of these commissions are too big, and you still find time to do, a kind of politically, culturally activist design. I think it's really quite remarkable. What is it you imagine like you would be doing in the future, or like what we need to be doing as designers in the future?
Wow, easy question. I don't know.
Always easy questions for me, of course. But like your work is, and you grew up with technology. You're the generation that grew up on a computer.
Mhm.
So you are from a different generation than I am. And now it's like the level of technology has gone beyond, so
Exactly.
you're working with technology, but then you're, doing a project like Islamic Art Biennale, which is very kind of classical. And so like,
Hmm.
how do you marry these two worlds?
I
How
think,
should we marry these two worlds? Because I don't think we should have ruptures. We should have some kind of connections between them.
yeah, I think, and I mean, specifically for technology and specifically AI, which is what everybody seems to be asking about these days, I see it more as a tool, just like any other tools that came along that made the work be a little bit different, a little bit faster. Or I think AI is great for quick iterations, for getting things started, for it speeds up research. But I think as it is right now, it still doesn't have the cultural grounding or the moral clarity or a view or a position on things that people bring through their histories, through their what they do. So to me is still a tool that will be embedded in how we work in the future, but our field is changing. But I think its future will definitely include, for example, additional expansion for Arabic typography specifically. As infrastructure, I think as a field, it is witnessing a renaissance, but it's in the first chapter. So I'm excited to see where that will be in 2, 3, 4 decades ahead, and what remains, what rises to the surface, what canon gets built. I'm very excited and proud to be a small part in that. And there's a lot of designers and type designers doing exciting things with Arabic specifically. I mean, I design, I see it remaining like a currency as cultural knowledge. And to me, that is important to maintain, to preserve, reinterpret, and reinterpret and preserve are two kind of dynamics that will still be at play. I think people have access to a lot more archives much easily, and they're required to kind of deploy them. So I think that play will still be happening, and that will be something that we'll see more of, I hope, or at least it is in my current practice, and I see it remaining.
Do you teach? Do you give workshops? I know you don't teach full time, you don't have time, but do you give workshops or like short
I do,
courses?
yes, I do keep one a connection into teaching and academia. I'm currently teaching at Columbia. It's just one course. It's
Oh, okay.
Introduction to Graphic Design for graduate architects at the GSAP school. It's just one course a semester, so it's not a big load. Yeah, I do give workshops. One of them is the Arabic lettering workshops series that I started with Christian Serkis and Khajak as well. And we do a poster for every one of these workshops, and we've done over 22 of those at this point.
Yeah.
I
Well,
have a
that's sort
lettering
of
course.
like hands-on. I mean, that's kind of like analog work in a way, right?
Analog and digital, depending. Sometimes
Uh,
these workshops are like 5 or 6 hours, and it's one day. Sometimes it's like 3 or 4 days, so it varies. It's a lot from what they're doing. Sometimes it does end into digitizing the sketches and some final form that's digital. Sometimes it stays analog, depending.
okay.
You have an online course on Domestika that's like the basics of Arabic lettering. Yeah, I do give workshops and I try to kind of like bring in something new every time to it, but it's always centered around Arabic, whether it's lettering, whether it's type design, whether it's poster creation, whether it's an identity that is focusing on Arabic.
But
Yeah,
that's not always with Arab students, right? So sometimes the participants or the students are kind of completely unfamiliar.
I've done a lot of workshops at different places, sometimes in New York or schools in the US, sometimes in places like Dubai or Jeddah or Riyadh or Beirut. So yeah, if your audience are already familiar with the script, you can just go into the details and skip ahead and get more in depth into what they are working on. If not, then you have to start with the basics, explaining how Arabic works and maybe focus their exploration into maybe just like your name for a start, and this is how you write it, and this um I think it's more exciting to work with people who already are familiar with the script because you can go further
Yeah.
and there's more room for experimentation and connection.
And has it, you said you've done this for quite some years now. I've done many editions of it. So have you seen like any, let's focus on designers from the Arab world or from the Middle East. Have you noticed like a change in attitude to the way people deal with the script, or do you feel like they're more experimental, less experimental? I mean, do you see any differences? Maybe they're regional differences. I don't know. I'm curious.
I think so. I haven't fully wrapped around or analyzed it yet because I didn't have the time to like stop and like, that would be a really nice essay to kind of engage it. But I think social media and what visual culture look like today made a lot of things evolve and transform into something else. 5-6 years ago, you had maybe an online portfolio, maybe a Behance. Now everybody has an Instagram and everybody's like putting work out there. Everybody's seeing what everybody else is doing. So there's a lot of cross pollination between Middle Eastern design and the international designers, but also within regional designers as well. I think there's like two things happening at the same time. One, a thoughtful look into the past, calligraphy specifically, and then a jump into experimenting with it and breaking it in a futuristic looking way. And that's yielding very exciting, expressive results. And that's very experimental, very new, very formally engaged. Sometimes it's like excessive in its references and layering what's trying to do. I love seeing it. I love watching it happen. I think also there's a lot of new studios starting. More than ever, all you need is just like a laptop and internet to start a studio. You don't even need a space anymore. So you have a lot of younger designers starting their own collectives and spaces and presenting themselves to the world as a practice. And that's exciting to see how they carve a space for them or how they do things. If there's any house style, how do they deal with typography? What kind of project they're working on? It's a new design ecosystem in formation over the past 5 to 10 years.
And do you think there's enough like practical information out there for these designers? Because, like when you said when you were studying, when I was studying, when probably people still studying in the Middle East today, they don't have, there's no education specifically focused on the region, especially on the Arabic script. I mean, there is, but not as much as you would think. There's not enough resources. Or there's not enough people writing and creating kind of guidelines that people can,
Right.
Fall back on at least to get the basic knowledge and then to go beyond that, on their own. Do you agree with that, or do you think I'm wrong about this?
No, I think you're absolutely right. It's slowly changing again with initiatives, mostly like Khatt Foundation that built a whole library of Arabic references, but also in general. We are seeing the like birth of like archives, online archives, whether it's as simple as a social media account just archiving things around them or a website that's publishing things. We do lack some literacy about these basics and about these theories. I think what we lack the most is critical writing about Arabic graphic design. I think I would love to see a more open, critical conversation about studios in conversation with each other, people approaching things differently and debating ways of approaching form making, really.
Yeah.
And what does that mean? What is interesting? What's less? What's the appropriate way of approaching a branding, a book? And we see a lot of archiving. We see some codifying and putting some rules. And we almost don't see at all any critical debate as to where we're going, where should we be going, what's valid, what we should do more of, what we should do less of. I think
we should have more conferences, what you're saying, basically bring people together to, discuss these things and kind of like argue a little bit. I think people sometimes don't dare to argue.
As a debate, not just as
not as presentations.
Exactly. Like everybody seeing that online. I mean, would love to see the two studio heads kind of having an engaged, friendly debate about why this approach would have been better for that project and what does that mean. And I mean, to me, that these are the things that I'm constantly thinking about every time I have a client. What does that mean for a studio practice? What does that mean that we serve the client in that way, that we design the logo this way, that we insisted on being bilingual, or we put the Arabic on top, or we suggested that type of typography for this institution, or that we designed this book this way. And what does that mean about engaging in history or not? And there's no right or wrong. I think it's just, I think as a design community in the Arab world, we're not comfortable with friendly academic confrontation. It's like everybody keeps to their own and privacy is important. We are all existing on a virtual design scene and community. And I think it would be more fun to engage more openly.
And how would you imagine this like as a platform? What would it look like, this platform where people can engage and kind of also open it to other people to listen, of course?
I think it's a little bit hard, but the first thing is what you said, like let's say a conference, but have a slot where there's like a conversation framed as a debate that is presenting two opposing viewpoints about approaching a very specific subject, and choosing two practitioners that have experience in either way and having them come prepared with examples and argument to back their point, even if like it's just for the sake of the debate. Nobody is here to kind of fist fight.
That would be fun too.
That would also
No, I think designers tend to be very diplomatic, actually. I think they're kind of trained to have conversations, so you would never have a serious fight. But that's also good. I think you're right. I think that's what we lack is proper like dialogue about different points of view and kind of, listening to other people. I think it's the hardest thing for human beings is to listen. We're very good at telling stories, but listening to other people's stories or an opinion we don't like is really hard. And somehow you have to train yourself to do that, because that's kind of the way you expand your knowledge as well, and postpone judgment and actually listen. Very hard to do, but very important. Do you have any final words for the listeners? Is there something we did not touch upon that you would like to talk about still?
I think it's very exciting for me being an Arabic graphic designer in New York. It makes my position quite exciting and interesting, and it always makes me long more to my own culture, but also sometimes feel even like an outsider to my own culture. So the position of a designer designing in a different place where they live and not speaking their own language on the daily and not is quite an interesting one, and it forms a lot of my thinking and my practice. I just want to say that people who are currently still practicing in the culture they grew up in, it's something very exciting and precious and something that I long to. And I think, I just long more for that. Maybe that's it. Maybe a hopeful aspirational thought is a good way maybe to end this.
Okay, that's very nice. It's very nice to hear. Most people kind of become dissociated a little while, but I hear you. I feel similar in some ways, even though it's being between two cultures, but it's also good for the kind of work you're doing. You talk about bilingual, but you're also kind of becoming bicultural, which I think is something we forget, that, you don't design in vacuum. I think understanding the culture where you're designing in or for, in this world that is like multi-script, multi-languages, whatever, it's good to have a little bit of, a bit of sensitivity for the culture that you're designing for, and not just like superficially matching things, because visually they look good. I mean, that's also important, but that's not the only reason you design with more than one script. So it's good that you are kind of you have one foot in New York and one foot in Beirut. So
Yeah.
it's a good stretch.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, the point that I was also making is that like the existing in a design community is very important for a designer around them. Being able to go to like show opening, meeting artists, staying in connection with things that excite you,
Yeah.
is very enriching for a graphic designer. Which is why I whenever I can, I try to travel back to the Middle East, whether it's to meet clients or to be part of workshops or conferences or to go back to Lebanon and to try to kind of like reconnect. Is very important. And it's important that designers who have that opportunity not to take it for granted and to, because the ones that are a little bit further from it, just like we do miss it.
Yeah, indeed, we do. And I think it's true. You miss it, and it's good. I mean, I tried to do the same. You try your best to keep the connection alive, not like completely cut off, because then your work becomes meaningless in some ways. Well, thank you very much, Wael. It was really lovely talking to you. I had many things I would love to talk about, but maybe we have to do that in private. But I really like your suggestion for, creating spaces for really like in-depth debate about what we do. I think we lack that. And that's really a very good remark that I hope we can work on that together.
Yeah, would love to.
Okay. Thank you very much, and have a lovely morning in New York. And until we meet in person sometime soon.
All right, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening. This was Khatt Chronicles, design stories from the Arab world.